It's already a Thursday this week. Week's gone by quick. Another gorgeous day. Colts and Texans on Sunday, a pillow fight that will be seen in Indianapolis and Houston, right?
Legacy game. First legacy game for Anthony Richardson. Stroud versus Richardson. Let's go. Part 1.
You can't even say it without giggling,
No,
right?
I can't. No.
We're going to actually talk to the voice of both teams. Marc Vandermeer, voice of the Texans at 1:30 today. Matt Taylor at 2 o'clock. Little college football to talk about, and we got all kinds of stuff going on. Instagram posts from athletes to get into. Possible renovations for stadiums to get into at the request of the players. Coaches talking trash to one another on the collegiate standpoint. Eddie Garrison's still on vacation. He's in Colorado, right?
Yes.
So Eddie was named the company's CEO, and then after being named CEO, decided that after 4 days of work, he needed a vacation, right?
High stress in the company sometimes. Sometimes it's too much for one person to bear.
Again, there was no HR department for him to run this past, so
he
he's
just
on
did
his
it.
way.
I respect it.
To be fair. And good afternoon to you, by the way, on a Thursday, folks. It is Query & Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. My name is Jay Query. That's the voice of Jimmy Cook. Nathaniel Finch is filling in for Eddie today, and I said, Nathaniel, please bear with me. If we've met before, it was when I was doing the morning show, and I don't remember. I would go home and go to bed and then forget everything. So I think we've met before, right? And he said, yeah, you made the joke about Atticus Finch like 7 times. I'm like, that's right. Yes, now I do recall. That's correct.
You don't even remember who you worked with on the morning show, honestly. I mean, it's all a blur at this point.
That's right. Well, my cousin's last name was Bowen, so it's easy to remember in that regard. But at any rate, this is Query & Company, and we've talked about, over the course of the last couple of days, I am thrilled with people who continue to tell me that they are part of the company, that they are in. Has anybody said to you, Jimmy, that they're in the company?
It's not happened yet, no.
Oh, come on.
I know.
That's now my goal is for people to come up to you and say, you know what, I'm in the company. Or maybe actually your friends don't like me, and so they're like, nah, I'm on strike.
No, I don't think that's it, no. I just think I have not been. But I also don't want it to be one of my friends. I want it to be just
That's right.
A stranger.
But here's the thing, Jimmy, the point being.
Not a stranger, a coworker.
That's exactly right. Because on this program, we're all friends, right? Yep. And yesterday I put out the all-point bulletin. I think maybe he wasn't listening again. Brian from Mooresville. I want to hear from Brian from Mooresville. I felt like I handled that incorrectly. I'd like a mea culpa, and I'd like for Brian from Mooresville to call in today.
You've done all you can at this point.
Anything fun for you last night on Hump Night Wednesday?
When saw Dave Chappelle at Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
Scouting report is?
It was first time I saw him. Gainbridge is beautiful with all the renovations. It was a fun night. Went to
was he,
for dinner.
Were you laughing the entire time? Like, Dave Chappelle to me, and I think he's a brilliant guy, and I think that when he was doing sketch comedy, he was really funny. And I don't know that this is the case in all of them, the last few stand-up things that I have seen him do, it was less stand-up and more him just giving commentary, which was insightful and intelligent, but I wouldn't list it as overly funny. Now, was it a stand-up bit of him telling jokes and making fun of things and laughing, or was it more him giving commentary on stuff?
I would say 70 stand-up, 30 commentary, and I don't go to a ton of stand-up comics. I don't go to a ton of concerts in general, but Chappelle does make me laugh, and I wanted to go see him while I was here. There were times where, I was bawling with laughter. It was a very, very funny set. So I enjoyed it. Yeah, but I can't say I've seen Kevin Hart or I've seen Jim Gaffigan or I've seen a ton of comics of this current era where I could say cream of the crop. Nobody could touch Chappelle because I don't go to every set. But that was fun. It was a fun night.
Stand-up shows to me are tough because more often than not, I'm just I hate to say this, I kind of know where it's going. I hear you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of times I'm like, yeah, I know what the punchline's going to be here. I don't know. It's hard to say that.
I will say I don't get that anyway with him. And a lot of good comics, I feel are very good at hiding the punchline until it's time to deliver it, and then laughter.
Right.
We don't have a laugh track set up. I haven't had Eddie set that up before he left, so we'll get there.
Fair enough.
We've got to have a director of laughter for the company, and we can get a laugh track.
I was talking to a friend of mine who went to that last night, and before we get into sports, let me ask you this question, because he and I got into a furious debate on the way in here. Furious debate. Screaming match on the phone.
Uh-oh.
My buddy was listening to, I don't know what it was, a TV show, podcast, I don't know, whatever, might have been one of these, might have been this radio station, I don't know. And he was surprised to hear a certain item in American culture that was referenced, and one of the people that was talking was unfamiliar with the product. It's a product. And he was like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And so my buddy said to me, he goes, what percent of people do you think are out there that have actually never heard of this product? And I said, I think the vast majority of people under the age of 35 have probably never heard of this product because it was everywhere for about a 2 or 3 year period 25 years ago. And then it kind of went away and you just don't hear about it as much. So I'll ask both of you guys. You're probably going to prove me wrong here because you guys are sports fans. But amongst your peers, your friends, everything else, how many people do you think are familiar with or have heard of or would immediately recognize by vision, etc., the Foreman grill?
I would, yes.
You would?
And I my wife would, and she's 2 years younger than me, so there's two.
Okay.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
You know what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, because I
had one in college. Like, yeah, I mean,
I felt like it would, maybe my years are off. I felt like 98 to like 2000 or so, it was a really big thing. And then
I feel like if you go births from like 04 and onward, maybe that'd be 19 years old right now. I feel like you'd have a better chance of hitting.
The purpose of it from a health standpoint, it seems to me, has been kind of outdated because
I agree with that.
Stuff is prepared. You know, the whole key feature of it was like it shreds off the fat and whatever else. And I think now, like people now, young professionals now are like they've only known that their whole life. They've never had to do that. Step has been done for them.
I think the way that it's co-opted now from a college mindset, like when I was in college, why I would want one or why I would use it was I couldn't have a grill.
Easy,
well,
right?
yeah, and I couldn't have a grill out on my pad. Like my landlord wouldn't let me have one outside. So you have to instead just use the George Foreman grill, which is a much easier process to go do, and you can make burgers right inside the house, right?
Okay.
Like,
do they still sell them?
That I don't know. I would think so, or versions of it. I would think. I don't know if you could come out a genuine George Foreman grill still at like Target.
I never had one, but I just was curious. Also on my way in, so I was wrong on that one. I was right on this one though. I stop at the gas station. I'm walking. I get out of my car, and immediately, and there's someone sitting at the pump. The guy goes, hey, man, can you help my wife? We just ran out of gas, and we just need a couple bucks to get home. I go, oh. And I look, and there's a woman sitting in the car at the pump. It's very convenient. That's where they ran out of gas, by the way. And I said, no problem. Happy to help. I go, as a matter of fact, I'll put, $5-10 in your tank with my card? No, that'd be great. I go, cool. Let me just walk around and see your gas gauge. What? Well, let me walk around. I'm going to have to go right where the pump is anyway to put my card in to buy you the gas. So while I'm standing on the driver's side, let me just look in the window and just turn the key to the on position and let me see where the gas gauge goes. And if it's on empty, I will gladly give you $5 worth of gas. If it's on anything other than empty, then sorry, I'm you ain't dealing with a fool here. Immediately the car starts up and they drove off. I'm like, okay, so I'm at least 1-1 on the day, right? But that's the oldest one in the book. I mean, I feel bad for people whose car actually does run out of gas and they don't have their wallet on them and they just need a couple bucks because the scammers are ruining it for everybody, right?
Yes,
it's the oldest trick in the book.
Start to lose trust in the entire system.
Colts and Texans coming up in Houston. That game is going to be, of course, this weekend and
legacy game.
Legacy game. Yep. The interesting thing in the NFL, Jimmy, is this, I think, is largely, obviously, motivated by the Aaron Rodgers injury. But did you see what the NFL Players Association is apparently going to lobby to the NFL?
Grass turfs, baby. Grass fields, sorry. Grass fields. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct. Now, I do believe, do you remember when Manchester United, and was it, well, you would know because you're a soccer guy, was it AC Milan and Manchester United that played a friendly here?
I think so.
I was at the match.
There you go.
Who was it?
I think it was Dortmund.
What's that?
Dortmund.
Is it Dortmund and Man United?
I think so, yeah.
Here at Lucas Oil?
Oh, okay. Well, this was in Vegas a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, no. I'm talking about at Lucas Oil Stadium. Lucas Oil Stadium hosted.
Yeah, I think it was AC Milan and Manchester.
And that was what, like 2017, 2018, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
During that match, I believe I could be wrong. Somebody call in and let me know here that was there and would know. But I believe for that match that they brought in natural grass. That they had like a, it's hard to explain. I'm trying to think of what stadium I've been in where they do this, but they actually have, for lack of a better phrase, and I'm going to put it in a really bad analogy phrase, but it's almost like an air filter that you like slide underneath, you know what I mean? You take the old one out and you slide the new one in. There is a system on some of these fields, and I'm trying to think of which one I've been to where they do this.
Arizona has it.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So it slides in, right?
Yep.
It doesn't stay inside the stadium.
Correct.
It slides in.
Correct.
So that's what Lucas Oil Stadium would have to do here, right?
Well, and to go one further on this, and maybe this is where you're building towards, but another reason the NFLPA is upset, and there was an article on this on The Athletic just a couple days ago, we got the World Cup coming into town here in 3 years, and speculation here, but 8 of the 16 selected venues are likely preparing to convert their artificial turf fields to natural grass for the tournament. Stadiums could opt for artificial services, though those services must meet stringent criteria set by FIFA. So basically, when the Cup comes to town, even if you're an NFL venue, you're willing to sacrifice and adjust for the World Cup, but you're not willing to do it for your own franchises, which is part of why the PA is upset further now.
I can see that.
Because soccer players don't play on
correct
artificial turf.
Field turf is what it's called, right?
Yeah.
So here is my thought on this. If if the NFL mandates, and I'm gonna voice something here that is going to literally, I'll bet 9 out of 10 people listening to me here are gonna roll their eyes and be like, "Whatever, dude," and they're gonna be like, "You're trying to, like play a straw man here or create a controversy that doesn't exist." But I guarantee you then, as this process goes further along, what I'm about to bring up becomes a talking point and a serious point of contention and discussion in many markets of the National Football League. Okay? I think everybody knows, and I don't need to go into it full throttle because it's admittedly probably at this point, it's not just a dead horse, it's now glue. I mean, I get it. I think most people that have listened to me on the radio before know of my appreciation and enthusiasm for what the Colts mean to this community and what it means in terms of the camaraderie and the civic pride and the things that they do around town. I get all that, and I'm all for it. I think most people also know of my opposition to the ridiculous and absurd amount of public subsidy that goes into the Indianapolis Colts, and as a result, the amount of money that the Colts still get from a public standpoint that has basically decreased the profit margin that the Capital Improvement Board and the city of Indianapolis should be getting off of building what was then the most publicly subsidized building in the United States. So, clearly, while I don't mind giving tax dollars to help or bump projects civically that we all enjoy, I don't think that it's our responsibility, especially in billion-dollar ventures, to take on the majority of the price tag. That topic is not only probably boorish, but boring. So I don't want to sit here and spend an hour on that, except for to say this. If the NFL and the NFL Players Association come up with some sort of an agreement that stadiums are going to have to do exactly what Nathaniel was talking about in Arizona with the tray slide of natural grass and move out the field turf and whatever else. I assume that comes at a cost. This grass has to be watered and flowered and fertilized and not flowered, but you know what I mean. Whatever. I mean, it has to be grown. It has to be taken care of.
You're paying a chief grounds crew to do this.
And in addition to that, you are probably having to make some sort of renovation to your stadium in terms of the facility itself for this to be a permanent every weekend thing. Fine. If the NFL and the NFL Players Association agree that that's what needs to be done, I have no problem with it, except for this. That ticket needs to be spent by the Indianapolis Colts, not the city of Indianapolis, not the Capital Improvement Board as part of Lucas Oil Stadium. That renovation, that change, that improvement, whatever you want to call it, that wrinkle, that modification, that home repair, whatever you want to call it, needs to be, that price tag needs to be absorbed by the National Football League. Their players are the ones that are requesting this. They're the ones that may well be the ones to agree to it. And if that is the case, then all of these stadiums around the country that have massive amounts of tax dollars, none of which has more at the time of its building than Indianapolis. The city of Indianapolis paid more for Lucas Oil Stadium than the city of Phoenix, the city of Dallas, and the city of New York paid for their stadiums combined. Combined. More tax dollars in that building. I don't want to see a single tax dollar go towards, and I realize most people are like, I don't care. I just want to see the team play. Okay. That's cool until you walk around downtown Indianapolis and realize that, like, it's a shell of what it once was, largely, in my opinion, and due to the fact that there is not the surplus of income coming from all of the conventions and everything else that we were supposed to get because of the fact that the profit margin is reduced because of the money going back towards the Indianapolis Colts for Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yeah, I'm with you. This should either be an owner expense or it should be something that the National Football League is subsidizing for their 32 teams. And I don't know. I'm getting into a realm of I'm not involved with business. I don't know how partnerships or sponsorships work, but I would think if the league was going to institute a league-wide remodel for all these different stadiums and different venues, that there would be a partnership with perhaps, like, for instance, Kansas City has, and I don't know what grass works in what stadiums. I get it. Kansas City's open air and Lucas Oil is a retractable roof, but Kansas City has Bermuda grass and, like, but they can get all the sunlight, everything. There's no issue with getting the proper type of growth conditions there because it's an outdoor venue. But if there was a company that was like the largest distributor of Bermuda grass, maybe they partner with the NFL and there's a cost-saving mechanism to that. I don't know. But either way, to your point, that should not be something that taxpayers, that citizens of these different locales should have to fix. It should be done by either the owners individually or it should be done by a partnership with the NFL and the NFLPA.
Las Vegas slides in grass, and that makes sense because in Las Vegas. Now, the other problem, in Las Vegas, you're not exactly going to be growing grass in a stadium, right? They have no water, right? Here's the other problem for Lucas Oil, why you can't permanently do it. Lucas Oil Stadium, for all of its brilliance, when it was built, has no drainage system. That's why when they're trying to determine whether or not to use the additional $113 million that they spent on the retractable roof, and they're like, and people are like, why is the roof closed? It looks like this outside. It's gorgeous. And it's like, well, there's a 8% chance of rain in the third hour of the game, and they can't run that risk because they have no drainage system inside the building. If it rains and the water collects, there's nowhere for it to go. They got to bring out like huge wetbacks.
That feels like an oversight.
You think?
Like, multi-billion-dollar facility.
I think the bigger oversight might have been to have a 17-story escalator deposit into the area where there's a bar and people are standing and not moving, and all of a sudden, like, you get a meniscus of humanity that overflows and suddenly somebody falls to their death. That's probably a bigger oversight, but yeah. To an extent.
Multiple oversights.
I promise I'm done. Did you hear about the Colorado and Colorado State coaching feud?
I did not know.
Head coach at Colorado. You want to talk about Colorado State? Talk about poking the bear here, right? Colorado State is taking on Colorado this weekend. Now, if Eddie Garrison is in our company CEO is in Colorado right now, okay?
He's not being a correspondent for us, is he? I thought this was just a simple vacation for him.
I told him that he has to climb the Manitou Incline. And if that's the case, if he did that yesterday, he is totally out of commission today. I can promise you, because it's a beast. I'm proud of the fact I did it.
Did you send him a reminder text?
I actually did. I was here's the link, because you have to reserve to go up it. The Manitou Incline, for those that are unfamiliar, I think I'm saying that correctly, is just outside of Colorado Springs. It was a railroad car incline. Like you see, like Lookout Mountain has the incline car that goes up to the side of the mountain. So the Manitou Incline was at one time, I'm assuming it was like some sort of a mining or cargo incline cable car that went up the side of the mountain. It's no longer active, so they replaced the railroad line with wooden planks that are basically steps. And you do, I think it's a 2,000-foot elevation at 68 degrees, straight upward. Not straight upward, obviously, because it's 68 degrees. But it is, and keep in mind the oxygen, right? You haven't acclimated yet. It is like the workout of all workouts. I'm telling you. Like,
I don't like that you didn't ask Eddie in the lead up to that, hey, you should do this thing. You didn't ask him, hey, do you work out a lot? Do you enjoy strenuous activities?
The visual evidence is fairly telling in that regard.
Well, right, but if he didn't look at the visual evidence and he just books it and then he goes there.
I mean the visual evidence of Eddie. I didn't have to ask the question if he works out a lot. Right?
I mean, I don't work out at all. I don't know if you would have had to ask me that question or not, but like I would have been very frustrated if you would have said, "Hey, go do the." Even though by the phrasing of it, what'd you say it was? What incline?
I do work out and don't look like it. So
the what incline?
Manitou.
Okay, had I heard the word incline, I would have been like, "Jake, this probably isn't for me." Thank you though, but I'm good.
Eddie was like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "Yeah, do it." So Eddie is busy doing the incline, so he didn't have time to report back to us on this situation in Colorado. Jay Norvell, I'm assuming I'm saying that correctly. Jay Norvell, head coach, Colorado State. Colorado State taking on Colorado this weekend. And I know a lot of people are like, ooh, that's a big in-state rivalry. It's more like probably Indiana and Ball State. That's not to say it's not a rivalry, but probably a lot of the kids that go to Colorado State are fans of Colorado.
Been 9 years since the Colorado State victory.
Yeah, I mean, it's
5 straight wins for Colorado.
Colorado's chief rival is probably Nebraska, to be honest with you, because that was a big rivalry back when they were in the same conference together. Of course, now Nebraska's in the Big Ten. But that was why it was a big deal. They played last week. I mean, that's probably Colorado's biggest rival.
They haven't played each other since 2019, but Colorado has won the last 4 games by a combined 104 points.
Okay. So that's what people now believe is going to be the difference this weekend. Because when he was asked about Deion Sanders, Jay Norvell said, and I quote, "Well, when I talk to grown-ups, I take my hat and glasses off. It's how my mom taught me." The second part there, I'm paraphrasing. Basically, he said, like, it's how my mother taught me. Now, maybe he's like best friends with Deion Sanders. Maybe he's totally joking around with them and they have a fun relationship. I have no idea. But needless to say, everybody else is like, holy cow. Like, why would you fire that warning shot, right?
If you are talking to another adult or talking about another adult and you use the phrase grown-ups, there's not a mutual respect there.
Here is the full quote. "I sat down with ESPN today. I don't care if they hear it in Boulder. I told them. I took my hat off and I took my glasses off. I said, when I talk to grown-ups, I take my hat and my glasses off. That's what my mother taught me. Colorado's not going to like us no matter what we say or do." Is it gamesmanship or is it dumb?
Dumb.
Think it is? What if they come out and shock the world? What if Colorado State? I've got a Colorado State shirt. I forgot to wear my TV New Zealand shirt. Sorry, that's tomorrow.
It's all right. Last time that I questioned a coach for being dumb was Fairleigh Dickinson, and look what happened. So maybe I am being too the other way.
I forgot about that.
That was March Madness and the NCAA tournament.
He poked Purdue, didn't he?
He did, aggressively. I want Purdue to hear this. I hope that, I care about the cameras, right? Like, it was very much, what are you doing? Like, you're a 16 seed, slow your roll a bit, and then they didn't need to slow the roll because they shocked the world. This is a regular season game, different stakes. I don't know. I've always been an anti-bulletin board material type of guy. And I get it. It's not Alabama. It's still a budding organization or rebirth of the Colorado fan base through Deion Sanders, but I don't need to add more to them.
Here's the other thing, though, Jimmy, that I thought of yesterday, and I threw this out on Twitter. I was listening last night to this radio station, and it was a national show, and they were talking about the schools where Deion Sanders may go from Colorado. Like, this is the springboard for Deion Sanders into, what school.
We talked about it a couple weeks ago. It's already started.
Here's the thing. You want to know my crazy answer here?
Sure.
I got to thinking more and more about, I figured out these schools, and I know people around here probably are like, why are we talking about Colorado and Deion Sanders? We're going to talk plenty about the Colts and the Texans coming up. But I got to thinking about this last night, and I heard people saying, like, Nick Saban at Alabama, how much longer is he going to be there? And Florida State, which is where Deion Sanders went to school. And, Clemson with Dabo Swinney. And other, schools that, Northwestern's looking for a coach. Like, where from Colorado? Now that he has tasted and shown success.
You had me on 3 of the 4.
Division 1. What's that?
You had me on 3 of the 4.
now that he has shown that he can have success, and I know it's only 2 games, but just the buzz that goes around him, the pregame speech that you saw, the players buying in, the sexiness and the marketing and the campaign and the attention and the spotlight and the love that it gives you from a national standpoint for your athletic department, and everything that comes with having Coach Prime, Neon Deion Sanders, Hall of Fame player, guy that can walk into any house in America and get any player to come play for him because they might not know what he did on the football field, but their dad does, and their dad's thrilled and their mom's thrilled that Deion Sanders is there, and he's got the glasses on and he's cool and he gives a great speech, and everybody's wondering, where is it that he's going to go? And I figured it out last night. And I have the answer as to the next step for Deion Sanders. And I'll tell you what that is, and then we will start previewing Colts and Texans next.
How'd you like to free up some serious cash?
Jimmy, you got any combos on you?
No combos on me.
If you were going to go buy some combos, which kind would you get?
Pepperoni.
Cracker or pretzel?
Pretzel.
Nathaniel, you got any beef jerky?
Do not.
You like beef jerky?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Who doesn't?
I've only known what combos were for about a decade because they were in the C-store at IU. And I was like, oh, this looks tasty. And I tried it, and I was like, wow, this is really good. Nice little snack.
Did you grow up in Siberia?
I think so, yeah. A lot of potato chips in the cookhouse, not a ton of combos.
Okay, that's cool. Chili cheese. You got any chili cheese Fritos over there?
Oh, yeah.
Love me some chili cheese Fritos, right?
Prefer the barbecue twist, but yes.
Those are good, too?
Yeah.
All of those are great road trip foods, right?
Yep.
If you're going on a road trip, you grab those. You grab Diet Mountain Dew. And we are going to do the first of the Aquarium Company road trips today, coming up at 1:30. Every Thursday, we'll take a road trip, meaning that we will be talking to somebody from somewhere else about what's going on in their market and how it applies to sports in Indianapolis. Today, it'll be Marc Vandermeer, who is the radio voice of the Houston Texans. Colts and Texans coming up on Sunday. So just an hour from now, we will fire up the car and go on our road trip. Deion Sanders here's a guy that, was I don't have to give his resume. People know. But he goes to Colorado, and I think that when Colorado hired him, there was a little bit from some people of like, okay, how's this going to work? And then it wasn't even necessarily the fact that the wins they've had and the start they've gotten off to, especially winning at TCU, that put them on the map, as much as the video that came out of his pregame speech and how guys were just totally bought in. And in addition to that, there are certain schools that need a coach that gives them an it factor. Indiana needs a coach that gives them an it factor. Terry Hepner, I think a lot of people thought was going to be that guy because he was a great guy and he was enthusiastic and he was a salesperson and he'd coached Ben Roethlisberger and he'd had success. And then, unfortunately, tragically, we know what happened when he got ill. But I think people felt like Terry Hepner for Indiana was an it factor guy. Joe Tiller, to an extent, was that way at Purdue. Like, he came in, basketball on grass, everybody's like, holy cow, takes the Big Ten by storm. Drew Brees is throwing the football all over the place, and Purdue, boom. Notre Dame right now, Marcus Freeman might be an it factor guy. Looks like a cool guy. You look at him, and you're like, man, that dude just drips like smooth, right? In great shape, handsome guy, like energetic when he speaks, seems to know football, and they're playing well under him, right? Might have an it factor. Colorado is a school that I have talked about before, was an it school when I was in high school. There were like 3 schools outside the state of Indiana that every kid, like, it was cool to say that you might go there. Arizona was one, Arizona State was the other, and Colorado. That was just like, everybody wanted to go to Colorado because they had played in the national title game in 1990. They had an era there for about a 5-year window where their football program was an it program. They were ranked in the top 5. They were on national television. They played in a super cool stadium with mountains in the background, and it was at the beginning of Mork and Mindy when we were all kids, and so there was just a lot to love about Boulder, Colorado, and about the University of Colorado, or CU, Colorado University, whichever way it goes. And it was an it school, and then they fell completely off the map, and it became one of the worst programs in college football. So Colorado needed a jolt, and they went out and they got Deion Sanders. Why did they do it? Because it gives them, and Boulder is one of the rising, cool places to live in the United States. The University of Colorado has always been a cool school to go to. There's a million things that people love about Boulder. It's one of the most expensive real estate areas in the United States of America. But their football program lagging behind until now. So, what program is the next to give a big contract to and enjoy the benefits of Deion Sanders? And I last night figured it out, Jimmy. I solved the puzzle. I solved the riddle. You want to guess?
I don't want this to be the answer, but I'm going to guess it anyway. Surely we've not gone down the path that it's going to be Indiana, right? That's not where we're going with this.
That is correct. It is not the path that I'm going with.
Okay, all right, then.
The answer is Colorado.
Going to stay put.
Why would Deion Sanders go anywhere else?
I've always thought it's probably 2 years, so I don't disagree with you. But you're saying permanently, like
I mean, if he's going to
sets
stay
up?
in college football, I mean, obviously, eventually he will leave. But I'm saying,
Yeah, all coaches.
people
kinda
think
do.
it's a springboard job, and I'm like, why? Why is it a springboard job? It's not. That's a destination job, and he is the one that's going to make it a destination job. They gave him up front $5.5 million a year. Now we all know, when you hire a college football coach, look at Indiana. I've always said Indiana's the one program from a football standpoint that the first second that a girl gives them a kiss, they drop down to their knee and ask him to marry him, right? It's like Cameron and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. When Ferris Bueller says, I got to tell you, the first girl with him, I mean, he's going to go ahead and marry her. Well, that's exactly what Indiana does, right? They get 1 year where there's a season where no one's going to the games because of COVID, and they go 9-3 or whatever, and they're like, oh my gosh, we've got all the limestone in the state of Indiana. We'll give it to you. Please don't go anywhere. That's what Indiana does, right? But because we all know that the first contract a coach gets at a college program is in no way, shape, or form the contract that binds him. They restructure and redo it. He's already starting. His starting point is $5.5 million. Now, Dabo Swinney, Nick Saban, they're making like 9, right? Maybe 10. Okay, so Colorado comes along to Deion Sanders, who, mind you, probably is worth $200 million. They come along to Deion Sanders and they go, look, we paid you 5.5. We'll make it 9. Okay. Now he's getting paid like anywhere else. Now, yeah, but Jake, what about recruiting? You can't recruit to Colorado. There's no players out there. That was true 25 years ago. We live in a world today where if you're a diehard fan of the Alaska, Anchorage, Seahawks, or Seawolves, or whatever they're called, basketball program, you can watch every game on TV if you want. You can watch any program, anytime, on any network, all the time, for any sport. And in today's world, you have kids right now that are entering college that have known nothing over their entire lifetime but FaceTime, the iPhone, Zoom. The world to them is not like, you talk to kids now that are seniors in high school, and they're like, yeah, my son this weekend's going to Providence, Rhode Island. Why is he going to Providence, Rhode Island? He's going to meet one of his best friends. Going to meet one of his best? Yeah, they do a gaming thing together. They've been friends since they were in the 8th grade, but they've never met face-to-face. That's just the way the world is for these kids. Like, it doesn't, the thought process of, like, I've got to stay close to home is like, wake up, man. So Deion Sanders is going to be able to recruit to Colorado, not to mention there are lifestyle things about Boulder, Colorado that are advantageous as well if you really want to get down to the brass tacks. But it's not going to be difficult for Deion Sanders to recruit to Colorado. Okay? Like, Dabo Swinney goes in and recruits players. Players recruit Deion Sanders, right?
Yeah.
I'm a top-flight dual-threat quarterback. I want to play for Deion Sanders. Like, can somebody get me in touch with can my coach get a letter to Deion Sanders? So there's that. And then in addition to that, as the conferences now are starting to align into these super conference things, Colorado was smart and jumped into the Big 12 or back to the Big 12, which is now about to merge. It's going to be one of the, it's got 16 teams in it and has a huge multi-billion-dollar contract with ESPN and I can't remember if it's Fox or CBS. So they're good. Like, they check all the boxes. And if he is on the trajectory that he is on, if Deion Sanders is in a position where he is coveted by major programs, it's because he has Colorado in the upper echelon. So why would you go somewhere to have to start all over again getting that program to the upper echelon? Stay where you are.
I mean, part of it is coaches like new challenges, and that's a multi-year thing. So maybe he's just happy with what he built at Colorado, ready to move on. Money's a big factor in that. Dabo money sounds pretty nice to me, particularly if it's at the upper echelon of
he's going to get
programs.
That there. He's already at 5.5.
I don't know enough about, like, I truly don't. So I will defer to you here. Like, can Colorado match a $9 or $10 million a year offer?
Sure.
Then if the money's not the issue, then he just wants to be on a bigger stage than he already is. And I get it. You can have a big stage at Colorado, but
Jimmy,
what's sexy? What's sexy is LSU.
Jimmy,
what's sexy is Clemson. What's sexy is Florida.
We're doing a sports radio talk show in Indianapolis, Indiana, on a day when we are 48 hours from kickoff for our NFL franchise, and we're going to talk about that for probably the rest of the show. But we're on a sports radio show in Indianapolis, Indiana, talking about Deion Sanders in Colorado. So, like, what bigger platform does he need? He's Deion Sanders. Like, Deion Sanders could be coaching literally at Haskell Junior College in Lawrence, Kansas, and there are going to be people that pay attention.
He doesn't need the big program. He can do it wherever, and he could do it at Colorado and be just fine and probably make a ton of money doing it. What I'm more appealing to is, does he want to stay at Colorado, or would he rather be more like if Florida State's the easiest one because it's his alum. He's an alum there, right? I get that. But if Florida called, or if LSU calls, or if Tennessee calls, and you get to go to the SEC, I'd be tempted to do that. Like, he doesn't have to. You're right. He can stay put in Colorado and be fine.
My point being, by the time, if Deion Sanders a year from now is still in the same topic of conversation, it's going to be because Colorado has ascended itself in its style of play and its competitive nature, where it is on par with Tennessee and South Carolina and Auburn, right? And so why not just stay where you are? If kids are coming to where you are, I mean, not only you're also living in like the most beautiful area of the country, right? I mean, that has to come into play, and you're close to an NFL market, and people are paying attention to you, etc. Now, in terms of Florida State, two things about Florida State. Florida State would be the one I totally get, but with Florida State, number one, and I read this. I read this yesterday, Jimmy. So it's not like this was household knowledge. He did not graduate from Florida State. He went back and finished his degree at a historically black college. And my understanding is when he's been asked about it, he has corrected people, and they've said, like, well, you're an alum of Florida State. And he's like, no, I didn't graduate from there. So I don't know if there's like an ill will there.
Maybe.
But Florida State's got a fine football coach. I mean, I think Florida State's heading in the right direction, and they've got a really good young coach. And I'll give them credit because when they were in need of a coach, I think Florida State went out and just said, and I don't know if he has connections to Florida at all, or Florida State, maybe he does. But when they went out and did a coaching search, and they ended up with Mike Norvell, I've got to look here. He's a Texas guy, and his background, Central Arkansas, Tulsa, Pittsburgh, Arizona State, and Memphis. Like, he just had good records wherever he went, and they said, you know what, this guy's a promising young coach. He's making $8 million. So if $8 million is the bench of what like a Florida State pays, then Colorado's already out of the gate. It's pretty close.
The reason I also struggle with this conversation, and this is not a hat that I ever like to put on, but I'm going to put it here so you can either dunk on me or you can acknowledge it.
Is it a size 9 like Eddie wears?
It's not a size 9 like Eddie wears. No, it's my normal 7 1/8 fitted cap, and it is the Notre Dame arrogant, holier than thou hat that I never wear, but it's there in case I ever need it for a rainy day. I have stopped believing in loyalty in college football. And again, I'm very happy that Brian Kelly's gone because I felt like he did what he was going to do. He'd reached his apex. I'm not bitter that he's gone. I was frustrated at the time because I thought Notre Dame was in that same class. Clearly, he didn't view it that way, or he just saw more benefits of recruiting or whatever he went to LSU. I no longer believe whenever a coach's in one spot that they're not going someplace better unless they are truly at a top-tier next level program, which is primarily SEC schools. So that's also why I have this clouded view on it, is because if Brian Kelly can leave Notre Dame, why wouldn't Deion Sanders want to go to bigger and better things in Colorado? Like that's just, again, maybe that's closed-minded, maybe that's arrogant, but that's part of my clouded judgment on this.
You just touched, unfortunately, Jimmy, on one of those things that keeps me awake at night, that I go over and over in my mind all the time, that I have a view on that I'm convinced that it's a hill I'm going to die on, that I'm correct about, and it's about loyalty. And I actually pride myself on being loyal, but when it comes to sports and loyalty, there's an angle on that I think explains all of it. I'll tell you what that is. Mike Vandermeer, who is Vandermeer. It's very difficult for me to say. Mike Vandermeer, who is the voice of the Houston Texans, joins us at 1:30, and then Matt Taylor at 2 o'clock as well. So plenty of Colts Texans talk over the course of today. Beautiful Thursday. Hope you're enjoying it, and I hope that you're happy that you're in the company. It's Query & Company, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
BullseyeEventGroup.com and the Colts VIP tailgate presented by Hayes & Sons Restoration. All you can eat, all you can drink. Celebrity chef from Fox, Kelsey Murphy, and more. You got to get your tickets now. BullseyeEventGroup.com. Sundown Gardens fall nursery shipment is here, and the product looks outstanding. Visit them this fall for all nursery, pumpkins, gourds, decor, and mum needs. 186th and Spring Mill Road.
Like when you really think about people that you talk to that are fans of a particular team, and you're like, why do you like that team? They're like, because I'm loyal. I'm loyal. Okay. Oftentimes, loyalty is defined by your number of options. Somebody that graduates from Stanford and has a degree in biochemical engineering and is working for Company A, and Company B comes along and offers them 250% their salary, they're not very loyal because they're going to move up because they have visions to go elsewhere. And then they work there, and then all of a sudden somebody else comes along and says, hey, I'm with Query and Company. Do you want to come work here? And then they jump to the next. And you're like, that guy's not very loyal. But a guy that like has been working the same job for 30 years, there's nothing wrong with this, don't get me wrong, but a guy that is just making a good, solid, honest living, but doing so at a relatively middle market job that doesn't have a formal education or a secondary education, he doesn't have a lot of people knocking down his door on coming elsewhere. And so the one thing that he identifies with is he likes loyalty, because the one thing about his job that he can push his chest out about is the fact that he's loyal because he hasn't left his job. Would he if somebody came and doubled his salary? Probably. But that's never been offered to him. So he says, but I'm loyal. Because it's easier to say I'm loyal than it is to say no one really has offered me an opportunity to better my position. So you talk about loyalty, right? And in sports is a business, and businesses are all about doubling their money, making more money, getting more interest, selling more tickets, winning games. And winning games does all of those things. So if you are an owner in sports, you have no loyalty towards your coach because you are always looking to better your position. And the way that you better your position is you sell more tickets, sell more merchandise, and there always in your mind is a coach that might be doing it more than the guy that's currently there. And likewise, for that coach, there might be some owner that thinks he's the guy that can do it for them elsewhere. And so he gets offered 250% increase to go. And guess what? He goes, and everybody talks about how he's not loyal. He might not be loyal, but he's improving his lot in life. And believe me, I'm a big supporter of personal interrelationship loyalty. Don't get me wrong. But when it comes to workplace loyalty, oftentimes that is simply defined by your options. And furthermore, it is often professed by those that don't have many of them. And that's totally harsh and unfair, and it sucks, but it's reality. But when it comes to at this company, I can tell you this, in Query & Company, we are loyal to our employees. I promise you that, right? Promise you that. Colts and Texans. We'll get you the Colts injury report, where things stand, and start taking a deeper dive on what they face on Sunday, and we'll do it next.
Previously on Colts football.
Colts, they got to get something going. Touchdown! Colts have turned it over on 4th and inch. Jacksonville outscores the Colts.
Now the Colts face CJ Stroud and the Texans in Houston. And we'll get our first overreaction on who drafted the better quarterback. It's the Colts and Texans. Sunday. Pregame starts at 10 o'clock. Matt Taylor has the kickoff at 1 on your home for Colts football. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Hey there, it's Jake Query. I want to talk to you about Villa Lici. Villa Lici is a community for traumatic brain injury survivors, and we would love for you to give an assist when it comes to helping create and cultivate a residential community for adult survivors of traumatic brain injuries. Think about this, and there are 100,000 people in the state of Indiana that have been affected by this. You know, you're living your life, you're going on about your normal activities, and then something happens. Maybe it's a car accident. Maybe you get hit in the head in a sporting event and you have a traumatic brain injury, and now all of a sudden life has dealt you that curveball. The unfortunate thing in reality, and it's unfortunately true, is a lot of times your friends, your coworkers, life kind of moves on, and then suddenly you wake up one day and you're like, what happened? Like, I was enjoying this lifestyle and now all of a sudden it seemingly is gone. And then think about the pressure that comes with those that are taking care of somebody with a traumatic brain injury. All that goes into that, the time, the resources. Villa Lici is a community here in central Indiana where the land has been found, the land has been purchased, and now We want to develop a residential community that is for those with traumatic brain injury so that they can get the socialization, the life skills necessary, and give the assist to the people that are close to them in terms of moving and getting them in the right direction with their lives. So we ask for your assist as well in the funds that are necessary towards building this community. The first of its kind in the United States, starting right here in central Indiana. Please, if you could, go to find out more by watching a simple video at braininjury.me. That is braininjury.me.
Is joint pain, soreness, and achiness getting in the way of your best life? Football legend Emmitt Smith refuses to back down to pain. That's why he's a huge advocate for QC Kinetics and their natural approach to getting you relief.
Look, we get one trip around, so I wouldn't ever let pain stop me from hanging out with my race team, traveling with my family, or golfing with my friends.
Emmitt's got it right. And QC Kinetics uses regenerative medicine to relieve that never-ending pain in your knees, hips, shoulders, and back. And the best news, there's nothing foreign being introduced into your body. Just your own body's natural healing properties. No surgery or no downtime.
If pain's holding you back, maybe it's tennis, pickleball, running, hiking, or spending time with special people in your life, what are you waiting for? This is precious time. Get out there and get over to QC Kinetics.
Call QC Kinetics 317-559-PAIN. That's 317-559-PAIN. 317-559-PAIN.
Jimmy, it's an interesting matchup because you obviously have two quarterbacks we don't know a lot about. I mean, we've seen promise from Anthony Richardson. I'm very curious to see what CJ Stroud looks like because I'll be honest, I thought coming out of college, and I mean this may still be the case. I thought he looked to me to be the most NFL-ready quarterback of those that we talked about heading into the draft between Richardson, Bryce Young. Bryce Young obviously was a great player in college. Stroud, Richardson, Levis. I thought Stroud was outstanding. And I thought he really showed it against Georgia how outstanding he is. But I think Trevor Lawrence had to learn this. I've mentioned this before. And I think CJ Stroud is having to learn this. And that is, if you look at quarterbacks that have the seemingly come in, and there are Andrew Luck was an exception here, right? Because he was obviously tremendous. Robert Griffin III, to a great extent, was an exception. But maybe those guys also benefited from what I'm about to say. They didn't seem to have a big acclimation period in the National Football League, and perhaps it's because of this. Like, give me a quarterback, Jimmy, that was an all-world quarterback in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years that coming out of college seemed like the can't-miss, number one, absolute stud prospect that I'm not going to say is a bust by any stretch, but is still learning their way through the league.
Justin Fields to some extent?
Perfect example. Perfect example. Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson have a similar style of play, similar size. Justin Fields, we are still now in year 3. If you were to grade him on a college report card, he would get an incomplete. I don't mean from a throwing. I mean, that's what the grade would be. We just still don't know. There are some plays where he looks unbelievable. There are other plays where he looks like he should be in a CYO league. But Justin Fields, when he was in college, who was he throwing to? Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. Like guys that were 3 feet away from everyone else. There were no windows to throw to. There was no collapse time to consider. All he had to do was throw the ball, and they were going to get it. And he did it very well, and he has a great arm. And all you have to do is watch him against Clemson in the semifinals when, he was literally just throwing balls up there for 55 yards, and boom, touchdown Olave, touchdown Wilson. It was unbelievable. But in the NFL, I think one assumes that that's how it's going to be. And Trevor Lawrence, we saw him here, looked fantastic at times for Jacksonville, but clearly now Trevor Lawrence has kind of gone through the awkward braces, headgear years of a quarterback in the NFL. He seemingly he's gone through puberty now as a quarterback, and it looks like he is an adult in the room. But it wasn't that way for him right away, because in college, Trevor Lawrence was throwing to Justin Ross and T. Higgins and Amari Rodgers, and he was handing off to Travis Etienne. All guys that are playing on Sundays. So he gets to the NFL and he's like, whoa. You mean there's actual windows I have to keep into consideration, and I've actually got to develop timing, and their defenses are totally different. Anthony Richardson, I think, benefits from the fact, I don't know his Florida personnel well, but they were not great last year. And learning the adjustment necessary towards learning the timing and realizing that you are not as spoiled as you were in college isn't as prevalent with him as it is CJ Stroud. Indianapolis is going to be able to hopefully benefit on Sunday, if you're the Colts, over the fact that CJ Stroud probably is going to try to make some throws that his brain is conditioned to make, Jimmy, because he thinks he's throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr., who's 2 steps ahead of everybody. That's going to be the biggest learning curve. And the Colts, if they're looking to get an early win here, it seems like this is an excellent opportunity for them to do so, right?
Yes.
I mean, what about the Houston Texans jumps out at you?
There's not a ton. I don't know when this releases because I'm a bad fill-in here, but I was with Kevin on Kevin's Corner, and I know when it released. I published the darn thing. So it released yesterday, and we were discussing the matchup with the Texans, and there's not anything about Houston that really strikes fear within you. The only thing is the optimism or the mystery of CJ Stroud as a rookie quarterback, kind of like what the Colts are dealing with right here. And Will Anderson Jr., picked by many to be Defensive Rookie of the Year, and the type of impact that he's able to have on the Texans defense. Outside of that, this is a winnable game. I know we're going to do our 107.5 The Fan picks tomorrow. I don't need to wait that long. I'm picking the Colts to win this game. I think they win it by 2 scores. This should be the type of game where, legacy game jokes aside, the Colts defense has enough pieces, not maybe to Baltimore's level, but they have enough pieces to make things hard on CJ Stroud all day on Sunday, to the point that even with a shaky run game, I think the Colts should be able to pull it out going away.
Yesterday during practice, there were 3 that did not practice at all due to injury. Or I don't know if you'd say injury as much as, it might have been precautionary. Quentin Nelson did not practice with a toe injury. Maybe he's got gout. Quentin Nelson, which is grueling, by the way. I doubt it. He probably stubbed his toe. Concussion, by the way, concussion protocol for Drew Ogletree. That's one of them. Fortunately, it's a position where you have some riches, but I think that was a bit of a surprise. Braden Smith out with a knee and ankle. Those guys, none of them practiced. Zach Moss, full practice. So,
big. Getting the FP on Wednesday is big.
It is.
I like that.
I mean, that's a big one. So, one of the things about week 1, to be honest with you, Jimmy, is they made it through relatively unscathed for all intent and purposes. I mean, the NFL usually it's unusual to make it through a game and not have somebody. I mean, they did have, obviously, Evan Hull, went on IR. But of your key notable players, they're in pretty good shape based on the fact that it's week 1, I realize, but I don't know that any of those are like lingering. Now, Quentin Nelson will be an interesting injury because I think we've seen with Quentin Nelson, he's a great player, but he's got to be 100%. When he's dinged up a little bit, it does not feel the same.
No.
And that affects everybody else in terms of his overall effectiveness. Now, Houston, on the other hand, one of the guys in preseason that I think looked really good for them. Do you remember what Houston did in the draft?
Outside of the way they went about getting CJ Stroud and Will Anderson.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
They got aggressive a little bit, right?
They did. Some would argue that the moves that they made to go acquire both players, some would argue they might have been able to do without being as aggressive as they were, but they did what they did. They went up and they traded up for Will Anderson, and then they were able to get back involved there and get CJ Stroud. So I don't know. It's a new coach. It's a new look for the Texans, and they felt like they needed cornerstone pieces on both the edge and at the most important position in the game.
And look, Will Anderson last week, 6 tackles, a sack, 31% pass rush, difference maker.
Yes,
he has been. He already. I mean, he's got to stay healthy, but he is off to a fabulous start, and he's going to be trouble for a long time. He's going to be something to deal with for a long time. But can you take the Texans? Like, which franchise of these two do you think other cities and other franchises take less seriously, Indianapolis or Houston?
This is exactly the type of conversation you want to be in if you're a Colts fan or if you're a Texans fan, is that you're at the lowest of the low, and that's where the conversation is. Who fears you more? Who fears you less? It's still look. It's too early to say because it's all going to be on who was right about their quarterback, right? And who wasn't. You think the Texans instill less fear?
I think the Texans are a bigger train wreck.
Yeah, I would say only because the Colts are more stable defensively.
The Texans did a really good job of jumping out, and I feel bad when I stand up because then Nathaniel's got to change the camera angle here. That's got to be annoying. Is that annoying, Nathaniel?
No, not at all. Do what you got to do.
But you never know. Like I don't really know when I'm going to just stand up and sit down. I don't know why.
See, but what just happened there, that's a company man right there.
That is.
Because even if it did annoy him, he wasn't going to tell you that.
That's why he's part of the company.
Exactly.
The Texans, I think it feels like going into the year, Jimmy, that they had the least pieces of the two, but I think they did a really good job of addressing that and getting foundation, to your point, in two critical areas that they can build upon. And I'm really interested to see what Stroud can do, because I just thought the world of him at Ohio State. When he seems athletic, but because of his athleticism, you forget about his arm, which is when he is in rhythm, he is really good. I mean, he can 100% put the ball where it needs to be. By the way, we've had a couple of exciting applications to the company lately.
Recent developments?
Yeah, we do.
Positions we haven't tackled yet? Or more finance people?
Caleb says, I'm now a moderator for the channel's YouTube chat. Is that true?
I would doubt it, but he can wear that title.
Does that mean that I'm technically HR for the company? No, we do not want an HR department. I've been around long enough to know no HR department, because when you get a call and you got to go to talk to HR, it means you've been laid off. Trust me, I've got my master's.
And I've told you how we fixed that at the company, right? You get invited by HR for things that are not stressful. Hey, I just wanted to get some pizza here. How you doing? How are things? How's the family? That's good. Hey, great work. Keep it up.
Jake, this is Jeff from Cincinnati. I'm a mail carrier. I'd like to be the head of distribution for the company. Yes. And furthermore, if you're from Cincinnati, if you could be the largest distributor of Little Kings for the company, right? Little Kings now available only in, Nathaniel, are you familiar with Little Kings? You laugh.
From your show, yeah.
How about that? Tell you what, company man indeed. You've been promoted. I think, as a matter of fact, you are co-CEO.
Wow.
Yep. How about that?
Off to Colorado next week.
You are? Yeah, that's right. That comes with the CEO position, right? Yeah. Nathaniel gets it. He knows what's up.
Unlimited PTO.
Somebody else had yesterday, several people came up to me to say that they want to be part of the company. My friend Dan, I call my friend Dan. We're having dinner on Wednesday night. First thing he says, Dan Wakefield, first thing he says, hey, you know what? I'm in the company. I'm on board. I'm like, yes. That's what I like to hear.
Aggressive expansion all the way around.
Noted author, best-selling author, writer of NBC television shows, and he's in the company.
That's big.
He knows what's up.
The one piece to the Texans that moving forward interests me a great deal is whenever they get John Metchie back on the field. Like the hype that he was as a receiver coming out of college.
Well, they got to get some weapons, right?
They do, but I think they believe that Metchie can be that for CJ Stroud. One piece, right? You need to continue to roster build, but he's been dealing with a hamstring injury now, and he was not available week one, a limited participant so far on Wednesday. I don't know if that happens, his availability, if it occurs for this week specifically, but I think it'll happen at some point. And, of course, he had his battle with cancer, which is why he didn't play at all in the previous season. So he's yet to see an NFL football field in full capacity. He was a tantalizing weapon in college. I want to see what he's able to do with CJ Stroud and what the Texans are able to do offensively. But again, I don't know if that's something that happens this week. You'll get a better idea from today's practice report where he's trending, but limited participant with a hamstring and did not play week one.
Stroud, I think, to a great extent, they're doing with him kind of what the Colts have done with Richardson so far. And maybe it's out of necessity, but you know, Stroud averaged 5.5 yards per reception in week one. So, you know, when you look at that, they're clearly trying to limit, I'm not saying limit the big plays, but they're trying to get him in rhythm, right?
Yep.
They're not, I think Stroud, I mean, week one, 28 of 44 for 242, right? 5.5 yards per catch.
Sacked 5 times, and that's big. That is big for where I think the Colts can dominate this game, is you know that you feel confident to some extent with this defense from what they did last year to where they are right now. You continue to ask for when does Kwity Paye take the leap forward? DeForest Buckner looked great last week. Like this needs to be a complete game up front. I'm not saying need 5 sacks, but he was running for his life in Baltimore.
And the thing is, you cannot. The Texans should know this with David Carr. And, you know, I talked to one of the writers down there recently that were talking about David Carr, and they're like, Jake, the thing you got to understand about David Carr, they didn't give him much help, but he also was not a great worker. And I've got to trust them because I'm not around it, right? I'm like, okay, that I did not know. But, I mean, David Carr, he was never able to get going because, he's the number one pick in their draft, and then they just never built weapons around him, and he was running for his life forever. And you get to a point, Jimmy, of no return, right? That's the thing to me for Anthony Richardson that was the best sign for the Colts is the fact that I thought Anthony Richardson looked comfortable. And he looked already like almost unaware of the fact that he wasn't supposed to be in that position. And that's a really positive thing because the last thing you want is for a young quarterback to have their confidence disrupted or rattled. And in Stroud's case, I mean, I think that's part of why they're just doing training wheel type offense with him, because if he's back there getting battered, they want to, at least from a throwing standpoint, give him a chance to start to feel in rhythm, right?
Yes.
Just hit the layups. Didn't Chris Ballard say that once?
I think so. And additionally, they didn't get a chance to do this in part because of game script, but you want to be able to dictate tempo with Dameon Pierce as well to take further pressure off of CJ Stroud. They were behind for most of that game to the point that they kind of had to abandon the run to some extent.
239-1070 is the telephone number. Jonah ended the show yesterday and I think is jumping on board today. Jonah, what's going on?
Hey, it's part 2 of the talk.
There you go.
I said I would call back.
I appreciate the persistence. Sorry about that yesterday.
Oh, no, you're good. No worries at all. So my takeaways of the game, I thought the negatives would be quarterback play in the secondary. Neither of those happened. And also the offensive line with the pass block, I thought was actually pretty decent. You couldn't say that at all last year, but I thought the run block was awful. Now, is that, with Deion Jackson and not having Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, that could be. I don't think the Colts go 0-4 on fourth down if he was back there. But that's the other thing I want to talk about is I thought coaching was just abysmal. For a quarterback that has training wheels on, I thought that it was too fast of a tempo on offense, and just with all the gambles that they did in midfield, I was just a little surprised because it seemed like they weren't trusting their defense, and despite putting up 31 points, I thought the defense played very well. And Jacksonville made 2 throws, one in the end zone and one to Ingram, that was just almost undefendable. And I thought this young secondary played well. So there's a lot of positives to take from this, but I just, with the limited offense, I like to see us not take so many gambles unless it's necessary. So I'm expecting a win this week, and I really think there's going to be a lot of growing pains, but also a lot of positives with this young team.
Yeah, Jonah, I think it's a good point. Listen, the reality is this. This time a year ago, if the performance looked the exact same, I think the optimism would have been less just because you knew that you were in a quarterback on borrowed time, so to speak, in Matt Ryan. You knew that you were going to have to turn the page eventually. And so that, in that regard, there automatically is like an energy and an optimism, right? Because everybody knows it's a learning curve. But you're right, there were positives. Jimmy, I mean, he's correct in the fact that the secondary, they're young, right? They're young corners, and that's a position, that's an area and a unit that typically has a lot of turnover from both an injury and just kind of an in the zone kind of way. But I think they showed, and you got a guy in Juju Brents that people are excited about that didn't even get that wasn't isn't healthy yet. So he's correct. There are reasons to be optimistic. I just don't think people should anticipate that means 8 or 9 wins this year.
No,
right?
But it should mean that you can stack a couple against teams that you're better than. And what I mean by that is we can say all we want. For some reason, we want to pretend that the Jaguars are like not a good football team, or that, they're still within reach of most of this division. This is far closer to, at least the Jaguars think this, the dominance that the Colts had, like the early stages of this. We talked about it last week. Than it is to the old AFC South that's dog water, that nobody trusts, that which team is going to spin the wheel and be the division winner this year. It's not that. And from a defensive standpoint, I know Calvin Ridley had 8 for 101. I know Zay Jones had 5 for 55. I get it. But they had to work for all of those with a secondary that we came in saying, a lot of young bodies, how are they going to respond? Where are things going to be as a whole? They made Jacksonville work for everything they got in the passing game last week. And that's something that you would hope translates to week 2, and with inferior receivers on the other side of the ball compared to Jacksonville, you step up and there's some turnovers, there's some interceptions that occur, there's quick 3 and outs from Houston's lack of offensive firepower. That's what you're banking on with this defense.
Do you have a playlist?
A playlist? Musical playlist.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good, because we're taking a road trip next. And we're taking it to Houston because Marc Vandermeer, who is the voice of the Texans, joins us on the program.
Not
Indianapolis, yes.
And if you're the Colts, why wouldn't you do it? What?
No reason not to.
And listen, I have nothing against Gardner Minshew. I think he's been a solid pro since he got here, which is not long, I realize. But he's done. He's handled it correctly. He's said the right things. I think and maybe that's the one thing he can do is tutor along Anthony Richardson. But outside of that, what good does he do you at this point? Now that you've handed the keys over to Anthony Richardson, if Anthony Richardson goes down, or if they decide that Anthony Richardson needs to just sit and watch for a while, which is not going to happen, but if that were the case, then the other quarterback on the roster is the one that last year Jim Irsay wanted to be the starter to begin with, right? And so why would you not? There's nothing to be gained by handing it. It's not like Gardner Minshew is going to get you into the playoffs, right?
I'm all for, particularly when you are on the doorstep of playoff contention or conference championship contention, et cetera, for having a valuable backup. The Colts are about 2 years away from that being a reality. If you can get future draft capital of any kind for a player that you're never going to put on the field, barring an injury to your own quarterback, at which point you're not trying to win games anyway this year, make the trade, get some draft capital back, and profit. I mean, that's what I would do. And also, if Minshew asked me, like if I'm Gardner Minshew, I don't know. I get it that players it's a brotherhood and they're worried about their team, but like Gardner wants to be a starter in this league again. And granted, it would be a one-off in New York, assuming Rodgers comes back next year. I know that's a big assumption to make, but if he does, that gives Gardner Minshew an opportunity for another open audition to the league to, hey, I can be a starter. Look at what I was able to do in New York. Give me a chance to be your long-term quarterback. It makes too much sense not to explore those chances unless, of course, given the fact that, the general manager's looking for Jalen Waddle for a position nobody cares about, that maybe he wants, I don't know, Garrett Wilson for Gardner Minshew. Like, if that's where negotiations are, then
here's the
maybe
thing,
not.
Though.
Obviously, I'm kidding, but you know what I mean.
I firmly believe this. With the Jonathan Taylor, I'm going to say negotiation for lack of a better phrase, but with the Jonathan Taylor exploration of trade and the Colts reportedly asking for Jalen Waddle or other like dynamic receivers, they knew as well as you and I that was never going to happen. Yes. But they wanted to present to Jonathan Taylor and his representation the line in the sand of what his market value was. And they wanted to say, see, these other teams are not willing to part with dynamic first-round level talents for your services. So we're not going to pay you like a dynamic first-round talent. It was a negotiating tool.
But you and I had this discussion about his contract a couple weeks ago, Jake, and it's like, I get what you're saying. I understand the Colts would view it that way as a tool to present to Jonathan Taylor what he's actually worth, but just because you can't get a top-tier dynamic first-round talent piece back for your running back doesn't mean at age 24 he's not worthy of $13 or $14 million a year. Like, if I'm his agent or if I'm Jonathan Taylor, that's not a 1 + 1 = 2 equation because they couldn't get Jalen Waddle for me.
I don't understand that. I don't disagree with that, Jimmy. I'm sorry. But what I'm saying is, okay, your wife tells you your favorite shirt. Your wife tells you got to get rid of it.
Okay. Sure.
Got to get rid of it.
Tough day, but yes.
And you go, okay, fine. And you know deep down you have no interest in getting rid of that shirt. But your wife's like, you got to get rid of it. And you're like, okay. And so you say to your neighbor, hey, do me a favor, put this on eBay for me and let people know if they want to trade me their finest Armani suit, they can have the shirt. And then after 6 weeks, you go back to your wife and you go, I put it on eBay. You saw I put it on eBay. But I mean, I couldn't find anybody that was willing. So, there's nobody to take it. So you wanted me to sell it, and I tried. In the Colts case, with Jonathan Taylor, I don't think they had any interest in moving him. They wanted to send him the message initially. Now, they might still do it now, but initially, when the agent was saying he is a player of like first-round talent, That was their way of saying, like, okay, so if you are expecting us to pay Jonathan Taylor by telling us the market value says that he is a first-round pick, then let's float it out there and find what first-round level picks we're going to get back for him. Oh, guess what? Nobody actually was willing to make that deal. So we now know what his market value is, and you can tell us what you think it is, but we're showing you definitive proof of what the market says his value is. Right?
Doesn't that get distorted, though, if the Packers or Dolphins really were willing to pay him what he's asking for? Then isn't it the Colts that are setting a fake market?
Yes, of course they are. The Colts are saying to the Colts are saying to Jonathan Taylor, you are not worth that money to us, and they're trying to prove to him that.
Okay, but why? Why are they trying to prove it to him? What do they hope is the end goal for Jonathan Taylor? That he sits there and is like, you know what? That's on me. I actually only want $9 million a year for. I'm serious.
Yes,
I'm asking seriously.
Yes.
What do they hope happens then?
Well, what they hope happens is, look, get in there and play because you're under contract. I mean, that's it. Get in there and play because you're under contract. But here's the thing: the Dolphins and I forget who the other team was, the quote unquote mystery team.
Packers.
The report was they were willing to pay him. Then the general manager of the Dolphins comes out and goes, "Yeah, man. I mean, like there was a phone call, but it wasn't even close."
I would also agree it wasn't close if the first words out of Chris Ballard's mouth were Jalen Waddle, please. Like, yeah, that's not close. It's not serious negotiations.
That's my point.
But so,
of course.
So I agree with you. They don't have an interest in trading him clearly because of what they're rumored to be asking for. But so what is their end play in your mind then? Tagging him next year and telling him, hey, if you don't want to play for us, bleep off? Like
yes.
Okay,
yes.
Then you and I are aligned in the same viewpoint then. I agree with you. I don't think they have any interest in trading him. They have all the power. Either he plays for the Colts or he doesn't play football. Like that's
correct.
Yeah, I'm aligned with you on that.
Correct. And I go back to, I've said it 100 times. This is one situation where I do understand both sides. I think Jonathan Taylor has a very legitimate case because if I'm Jonathan Taylor, I'm looking at precedent and I'm going, you extended Quentin Nelson when the guy had 3 surgeries in like 18 months and you gave him an extension. You extended Shaq Leonard when they were still figuring out if the foot bone's connected to the knee bone, connected to the neck bone, right?
Yes.
I mean, you extended Nyheim Hines and then traded him. But you won't extend me? And then if you're the Colts, you also say, yeah, but, running back is a fungible position. I mean, there are if this was high school debate class and both sides sat up there and gave their point, you would probably you would score it as a draw, right?
The only reason I don't score it as a draw, and we're not going to know this until the dust finally settles.
By the way, this is the worst road trip I've ever been on.
It is tough. It's like that we hit a wrong song that we both disagreed on, and it's led into...
We're like Fozzie and Kermit, and we just took a wrong turn in Rhode Island. What the hell are we doing? Right?
The only way I'm willing to score it a draw, and we're not going to find this out for weeks and weeks, and I've said this before on this program. If the Colts are operating underneath a world where Jonathan Taylor asked for $15, $16 million a year, then yes, I agree the Colts are probably partially in the right because we're not going to pay you that. But if it is a $13 million a year deal for 3 years, that's no longer insanity to me. He's only 24 years old. He's going to be 27 by the time that contract's done, and you want him around to help develop Jonathan Taylor. If it's just $13 million a year, and that's what's holding you back from helping your young quarterback develop, get off your high horse and pay him.
Again, I don't disagree with that. I mean, it is fascinating because there are valid points both ways. Did I just, unfortunately, disconnect Derek?
Oh, yeah.
Derek, call right back. I meant to punch him through, and I think I disconnected. What did they do to this computer? Derek was waiting patiently for almost 20 minutes, and I think I inadvertently. Derek, please call back at 239-1070. In the meantime, let's go to the phone lines. Brian's been waiting. Brian, what's up?
Hey, Jake.
Are you part of the company, Brian?
No, I'd like to be. The other day I was on the phone with you and I was talking about movies and I was a little bit negative.
Oh, no, is this Brian from Mooresville?
It is.
Yes, it is.
Brian, let me tell you something.
And I apologize for that.
No, you know what, Brian?
I really enjoyed the program.
Did you hear the show yesterday, Brian?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I don't know if you heard it in the beginning, but I was asking you to call in, so I appreciate you did. I went back. Do you ever watch Seinfeld, Brian?
Oh, yes.
Okay. You know the episode of Seinfeld where George gets so mad at himself because after the fact he thought about what he should have said when the guy got on him about Jerk Store and the shrimp. I don't know if you remember that episode.
Oh, yes. Yes,
okay.
I do.
So, Brian, I kid you not when I say this. That was on Tuesday, I think, when you called in. And for those that are unfamiliar, you called in and I took you cold turkey and you said you don't want to be part of the company because we were talking about movies and you thought it was a sports show. And then we talked about The Wizard of Oz very briefly. And then I got home and I pulled a George Costanza. And when I got home, Brian, I thought to myself, you know what? I handled that totally incorrectly, and here's why. Because you turn on this radio station in hopes of listening to a sports show, and you called in to very politely voice that opinion, and I took you on the air without you getting the chance to say why you were calling in. And I probably myself handled that incorrectly and was not totally appreciative of the fact that you were the listener, which means you're the customer, and the customer's always right. And so I handled it wrong. I apologize for that. And then I thought to myself, if you are listening to this show, which you still are, and I appreciate, and you want to hear sports, then I should give you the open platform to bring up the subject matter of which you'd like to discuss. So with that apology, what's on your mind today? And thanks for calling back.
I'd like to tell you this. We do have some things in common. My birthday is September 3rd, 1958.
Well, happy birthday. So do you remember your 14th birthday?
Oh, I'm sure I do.
Did you hear the earth? Did you feel the earth move on your 14th birthday?
Yes, I did.
Because you know what was happening at Methodist Hospital. The celebration was on, Brian, because that was the day I was born.
Okay.
All right. So we got that established.
Another thing, real quick. I did go to Washington Township schools, so we have that in common.
Now, were you an Eastwood guy?
No, I was a West Lane guy.
Okay, well, Eastwood's better than West Lane, but Brian, we can still meet halfway because
we did move, and my brother did go to Eastwood.
Okay, there you go. And then you were a Panther, so hail our Panthers. That's cool.
Right. Both my sisters graduated from the North Central, and I only went 1 year. We moved again, and the other thing is, I'm a big Rays fan, and I enjoy your broadcast on the 500. I always listen to the radio for that.
Well, I appreciate it. It's the easiest job in the world, and it's a heck of a lot of fun. I can tell you that.
But I really enjoy it. So
I appreciate it.
My first race was in 1968. So
68. Who won?
Bobby Unser.
That is correct. Yes, the first of his three. One of only two men to win it in 3 different decades. Brian, your thoughts? Your Colts Texans thoughts on Sunday?
I think the Colts can win, but I think it's going to be tighter than people think. I think it's going to be a close game.
Here's the thing, Brian. I hate to say this. Doesn't it feel like it's kind of a close game because it's literally like a
You're not sure what's happening?
Yeah, it feels like a musical competition between two mimes. You know what I mean? Doesn't it? Like, let's be honest. That's just the reality of it. Brian, here's the thing. I'm going to hire you for the company, and here's what I love about it. You are the director of compromise because both of us compromised over that call and found common ground. How's that?
That sounds great.
And us September 3rd kids got to stick together, Brian. So happy belated birthday to you.
Thank you.
All right, that's Brian in Mooresville. See? Jimmy is in awe.
I've been trying to figure out for decades how we can achieve world peace. Who knew it was here on the company? Or common ground can be found after on-air confrontations.
Jimmy, let's be real unprecedented for this job for you. That's new territory, right?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Can we agree to that?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Okay. Matt Taylor, by the way, the voice of the Colts, going to join us at 2 o'clock. Matt, Steve, Derek, Rick, stick around. We'll get to you. Derek, you know what? Derek, I feel bad for, so let's just take him now. We're over, but I'm taking Derek. Derek, I totally apologize. That was my bad.
No problem. Well, thanks for taking my call. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. What's going on?
Oh, nothing. I think we're going to win. I think we're going to have a good day against CJ Stroud, and he's going to get sacked, and he's going to throw interceptions. That's just what I think.
Does Will Anderson and the defense that Houston can throw at Anthony Richardson concern you at all?
Will Anderson does concern me.
Yeah, he's good, isn't he?
That's because he had a field day, a pretty good game, his first game. That's the only thing that concerns me. But I hope Q will be back in. I hope the offensive line can block, and maybe we can get a half a yard on that Philly special push or whatever they call it.
Now, Derek, you are the director of veteran affairs, if I'm not mistaken, for Query & Company, and you just had a surgery. Everything going all right?
Oh, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. Another rotator cuff surgery. I'm recovering very well, and waiting to start physical therapy next week.
Another? So you've had one before?
Had one in 2020.
Okay, so you're actually the official. You're the official Andrew Luck division president. Andrew. Yeah, that's right on the company. Derek, enjoy it on the mend, by the way. All right, and I appreciate you listening.
One more thing I wanted to say. So who's going to be first to take JT's sign down? Is it going to be his agent, or is it going to be JT, or you think Ballard's going to climb up there?
Boy, that's a good question, man. We got 3 more weeks to probably figure out what happens there, right? Because if he ain't playing in week 5. And a better question would be who goes up? I guess it'd be Richardson, right? Is Richardson up yet?
I don't know.
You got Shaq Leonard. You got Quentin Nelson.
If he's not up, that's the easy answer, right?
DeForest Buckner and Taylor. Isn't that the 4?
Think so.
Yeah, it's obviously Richardson, right?
Yeah.
They're probably doing the mural right now. They're over at Fast Signs putting one together.
Not if Jake Funk has anything to say about it.
That's right. We need the funk, baby.
Join JMV tonight at Park Place.
which is a feature we're going to start doing on the show regularly, where every Thursday we talk to somebody from outside market about something relevant to Indianapolis. And
do you have any idea how many movies I had downloaded ready to go for the road trip?
I know, mostly because that way it takes away the art of conversation.
Exactly.
So I was appreciative. You were ready to go. We had the snacks ready to go. We had the intro music for the road trip, and then we hit a snag. We hit a snag, and we got a flat, and we pulled over to the side of the road, and our road trip seemingly was ruined. And then, of course, I remembered that I have AAA, so no problem.
Big of you.
And if you don't have AAA, you're missing out. Hoosier.aaa.com is the website. We called AAA, and they said, yes, we got a hold of your guy, and he's actually going to be on at 2:30 instead of 1:30. So, boom, we're back on the road. And Matt Taylor joins us next.
aggregate experts. We'll find out in 30 seconds.
Do you want to work for a company who has your back? You can count on Shelby Materials. Shelby Materials has 10 ready-mix locations in central Indiana and is looking for Class B CDL drivers. Highlights include being home every night and every other weekend off during peak season. Shelby Materials stands behind its work, products, and people. We support our employees with competitive wages and benefits, including 401k, PTO, paid holidays, HSA, and a sign-on bonus. Learn more about your next opportunity by visiting ShelbyMaterials.com.
Now, what's happening on West 56th? Brought to you by Shelby Materials, the concrete and aggregate experts.
Colts and Texans set to tussle on Sunday. Of course, one who will be there, he is the radio voice of the Indianapolis Colts, joining us on the program, as you just heard, brought to you by Shelby Materials, the concrete and aggregate experts. Matt Taylor joins us. Matt, I'll get right to probably the question that from here on out is typically going to be the first, and that is just kind of a health report card. A couple of guys missing practice yesterday that sat out. Quentin Nelson was out yesterday. That probably is the one that really jumped out. Drew Ogletree and the concussion protocol. Where do things stand from a health standpoint today?
Yeah, those are the big ones. Certainly. I mean, anytime you're talking about two starting offensive linemen and compounded with just like the lack of depth.
Braden Smith was the other one, by the way, that was set out. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. So, Nelson and Smith, you're going to be watching those guys pretty intently. The Colts actually are practicing right now as we speak. The injury report typically comes out around 3:45, 4 o'clock, so we'll see where they're at today. But like you said, neither guy practiced yesterday. Nelson, he left the game early, not early, but he missed a handful of snaps in the second quarter against the Jaguars on Sunday with that toe. But he was able to come back and, just in typical Quentin Nelson fashion, gutted it out. Obviously, watching what's going on with Zach Moss, he practiced for most of the week last week. It was questionable on Friday, downgraded to doubtful on Saturday, then was inactive on Sunday. You're just watching that because of just the lack of playmaking ability that was there at the running back position on Sunday. Colts running backs only, they had I think 16 carries for 25 yards. You're just not going to win many football games with that type of production from your running game, especially when a team can afford to stay in that look, that cover two, load the box type look, because knowing they can slow down the run, and they're also doing a really good job of limiting the big plays from Anthony Richardson playing zone defense. So yeah, Zach Moss is big, and then those two offensive linemen are big because of who they are, what they mean, how good they are, and just because of some inexperience in your reserve offensive lineman room, if you will.
Matt, when you look at Anthony Richardson, who I thought, for the most part, I mean, a young guy making his first start in the NFL. I mean, we've seen guys that kind of clam up a little bit. I thought he looked comfortable for the most part. But if there were plays that you go back and they look on film and they go, okay, this is like if Houston's looking at the tape of Anthony Richardson, the thing or the area where he would seem to show a little bit of vulnerability would be when he is facing what?
Well, I just think it goes back to the scheme that the Jaguars played. They did a really good job of forcing him to take underneath throws, and he started the game really, really well. Did Richardson? I think he completed like 15 of his first 19 passes, and you certainly would take that all day. But the problem was, I think the Colts ran 69 plays on offense, and they only had 3 plays for the entire game go over 20 yards. One of them was a Granson catch. Another one was certainly that Pittman Jr. Wide receiver screen that he turned into a 39-yard touchdown. But that's a yards after the catch, right? That's a play that happens at the line of scrimmage where a great player ends up making a great play. It's not pushing the ball down the field and taking advantage of scheme. So you give credit to Richardson for taking what was there, and I think more importantly for the totality of the game, not making bad mistakes while trying to force the ball. Maybe he certainly did on that one interception. Tyson Campbell did a great job of kind of baiting Richardson into that throw, thinking in coverage. He's going to definitely learn from that. But I think it's just going to be really interesting and fascinating to see how the Texans and every other team now going forward play the Colts, because They did a good job against the run, which then afforded them the ability to stay in those zone coverages, to limit the damage, to limit the big plays, and take away Richardson's effectiveness and his arm strength, being able to push the ball down the field. I mean, I think, if you want to get real stat nerdy on you, but I think he was Richardson was 2 for 10 pushing the ball down the field beyond 8 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, which just goes to show you that the Jaguars were intent on making Richardson beat them with a lot of nickel and dime stuff down the field, make him work for it, right? Go on these long extended drives, not give up big plays, not give up the home run that ultimately gets you beat. I mean, it's kind of cliche, but I think it's true. I mean, third down, red zone, and big play ability, those are, if you win those three kind of battles within the war of an NFL game, you have a really good chance to win. And unfortunately, the Colts lost all three of those major important categories.
Matt Taylor, the voice of the Colts, nice enough to take some time with us here on Query and Company. Mate, I was impressed with what I saw up front from the Colts in week 1. And when you look, and I know you have it, the film from Houston's side of things, CJ Stroud spent most of his Sunday running for his life. Is sacked 5 times. Baltimore's defense really able to get home a ton. This isn't necessarily an if not now when game, but how critical to dominating the proceedings is it for the Colts for DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, Kwity Paye, Samson Ebukam to make their presence felt and make life difficult Sunday for CJ Stroud?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think they got to. I think the sense of urgency in this game has got to be just incredibly high. And I know that sounds silly because this is the NFL and you only get 17 games and every game's important. Yes, but you're talking about potentially going down 0-2. You're potentially talking about going down 0-2 inside the AFC South, which is even more damning. I mean, the percentage of teams that start 0-2 and go on to make the playoffs is less than 12%, right? So it can be done, but it just shows you how important it is to get this game against a rookie quarterback that was under pressure a lot last week. In fact, Stroud was sacked 5 times against the Ravens, which was more than any game he had been sacked at all at Ohio State. So he played with some great players, great offensive line. He certainly had elite weapons to throw to in the college game. But I think that is the key: is get in his face, make him uncomfortable, make him throw before he wants to, get him out of the pocket, because he's not going to run, or at least he's not looking to run outside of the pocket. He's still looking to make something happen. Traditionally that was the type of quarterback he was at Ohio State. And again, he played with great players at an elite program, and you can't take anything away from him as far as his production and all of that. I mean, this kind of sounds like the conversation we had back in February and March leading up to the draft. But, I mean, his completion percentage when he had a clean pocket at Ohio State the last couple of years was 71%. On the rare times when he didn't have a clean pocket and when he was under pressure, that completion percentage dropped to 41%. So he's a completely different quarterback, as are most, when he has people in his face and he's throwing under duress. And that's where Buckner and Ebukam and Stewart and Kwity Paye and Dayo Adengbo, they have to win up front. And I think based on what they showed in week 1, I think they will, or at least they should, because they dominated that game for long stretches in week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, fourth quarter defense let them down, red zone defense let them down. But I'm optimistic about this defense more so than last year, because they dominated, I thought, that game for 2.5, 3 quarters on Sunday.
Matt Taylor's our guest. He is, of course, the voice of the Colts. He is joining us by way of Shelby Materials, the concrete and aggregate experts who make it all possible for the conversation. Matt, let's go back to, just offensively. I thought Josh Downs early on looked like, it seems to me like that's a guy, the analogy I've used probably too many times, Matt, is when you're playing your buddy in horse, no shots are dropping. So you go and you just do a couple of layups and a couple of free throws to get yourself kind of back in rhythm. I thought Anthony Richardson, Josh Downs, was a really important piece for him to just get in rhythm, get his footing in terms of the passing game, and then later other pieces came to fruition. Is that kind of going to be Downs' role over the course of the season, a guy that they use early in games to kind of jumpstart things?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, to build that rhythm and build that confidence from Anthony Richardson, and also establish one of your best playmakers you have on offense. And I think I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I mean, Downs has to bring something to this offense that they haven't had the last couple of years. He's a true slot receiver. He's small. He's really shifty. He's got really good speed. But I think more so than anything, because of his family football lineage, if you will, his dad was a player in the NFL, a coach in the NFL. His uncle was Dre Bly. He just has a really good feel for the game, instinctual, football IQ, for lack of a better term. So he just gets it, and I think he can help Anthony Richardson get going early in games. Like on the third and medium, on those true money downs, right when it doesn't favor the offense or defense. That's where Josh Downs comes into play. And you're right, they got him going early, not so much later in the game. In fact, the Colts offense just didn't do, unfortunately, too much late in that game. But I think that can lead to, a seam pass over the middle to Drew Ogletree like we saw, or, a big out route for a first down and 15 yards to Kylan Granson. So, those two guys have a lot of synergy and chemistry going on early, and I would expect to see Josh Downs have a big year and be one of the more confident players that Anthony Richardson throws the football to in high leverage situations.
Is it fair to assume that you're going to be calling Zach Moss's name on Sunday?
Yeah, it's trending that way. I think, again, he's got to practice in full like he did yesterday. Got to practice in full again today and tomorrow to have a good shot. But, he broke his arm on July 31st, which I think was the first day of full contact up at Grand Park in training camp. So we're just now starting to get into week 6, where the stereotypical doctors and trainers will tell you that's the normal rehab and recovery time for an injury like that. So maybe last week was a little bit early and kind of premature, and just didn't have a lot of practice time and conditioning back under his belt, because he missed so much time of training camp in the preseason. Now that he practiced last week and he's practicing again this week, he's getting more run with the first-team offense with Anthony Richardson. I would say, just my gut is that he's going to be out there, and that should, provide a more of a spark for the running game, which they desperately need after what happened to him last week.
We're going to talk a little bit to Marc Vandermeer coming up after this, Matt, and I want to get your perspective as well, being on the opposing side of things. I know there's only 1 week of film and stats to digest in, but what are your initial impressions on Will Anderson Jr., and how do you think he's going to test the Colts offensive line?
Yeah, just watching him, on tape a little bit, he's as advertised. He got the sack on Lamar Jackson in the fourth quarter, but I thought he was better than that. He had a lot more pressure on Lamar Jackson than if he just turned on turned the box score up on your phone or something and said, well, he only had 1 sack. He was really, really, I think, more disruptive than that. Jackson had to make a lot of typical, Lamar Jackson athletic type moves to get out of sacks from Anderson. And I think their front seven in general is deceptively good. I think it's really, really good. And they play hard. They run to the football. That's sort of their MO under DeMeco Ryans. And again, I'm really eager to see how much of those zone coverages from the Jaguars they implement in this game. But they've got Malik Collins, Denzel Perriman. You talked about Anderson. They've got Jerry Hughes, who's now more of a rotational piece, which is crazy because Hughes still had 9 sacks last year. This is his 14th season in the NFL.
I was going to say it feels like he was drafted by the Colts in 94.
Yeah, no, it's 2011. If I'm not mistaken, it was 2010. Excuse me. It was the second to last draft class for Bill Polian before they switched that era of Colts football. But he's still getting it done in the back end. They got Derek Stingley. They've got Steven Nelson. Kind of watching out for what's going on with their safeties. Their safeties are banged up with Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward. If I had a hunch right now, I would say it's going to be tough for both of those guys to play on Sunday, which should help the Colts because I think both guys are really, really good. You got a young guy and then a savvy veteran in Ward who comes over from the 49ers who spent all those years with Ryans there. But yeah, I think this is a deceptively good defense. Last year, they were not very good at stopping the run. They were better at the pass. But, I think, as Rick Venturi always says, you look at how they can beat you, not if they're going to beat you, but if everything goes their way on a particular Sunday, which this league's all about, right? Any given Sunday, here's how they can beat you, and they're good enough to do that because they got playmakers on that side of the ball, I think, in all three levels of their defense.
Matt, I've always felt like sometimes road trips can be good for teams because it's just you get kind of a us against the world mentality when you go on the road, so to speak, if that makes sense. And I'm curious, when you have noticed when the Colts go on the road, how much free time, like do guys kind of stick to, oftentimes guys have family in the respective areas where they're going or whatever it might be. But do you find that guys do, in fact, kind of hang around and learn about one another and bond, to use that term?
Yeah, I think so. They don't have a ton of free time because, you think about it. You're playing on Sunday at 1 o'clock in Houston.
And they'll fly in when?
Yeah, they'll fly in. They'll get to the team hotel probably like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on Saturday night. And so you check into your hotel. You kind of get settled a little bit. Maybe like an hour or two later, you've got a team meal. You've got a team meeting. Then you'll do some position meetings. There's been times in the past where they actually even like do a walkthrough, like in a banquet hall, like a big banquet room at a team hotel, just to have one more sort of like mental refresher before the game. And then it's pretty much lights out by like 11, I think at the absolute latest. But guys will get creative on, finding pockets of time to go out to dinner, like with their agent or, family that's in town, or, if your mom and dad are in town. So, but if you don't have that going on, to your point though, guys typically kind of glue together. They stick around with one another and hang out in each other's hotel rooms, or they'll end up going to dinner if whatever is going on with the team dinner is not, appetizing to them in terms of the menu. They might walk down the street and grab a bite to eat. So, yeah, for the most part, it's pretty much a business trip. It's laid back, but it's very much business oriented. And guys know that as soon as they land, it's all about the process of getting ready for the game on Sunday and getting ready for kickoff at noon Central Time in Houston.
Matt, is there an area on this roster that, I know you're probably never like negative or worried about it, but maybe an area where you're like, I don't know how this is going to go, that inspired confidence in you more so than was there to start the season after week 1?
Well, just the running game in general. I thought the running game would certainly not be as, fruitful with Jonathan Taylor out there, but I didn't think it was going to produce, 60 whatever yards and 2/3 of it come from your quarterback and Anthony Richardson. So again, I just think you've got to run the ball better. The offensive line's got to be better, but just the running game as a whole has to be more impactful to force teams out of playing a cover 2 shell that takes away the deep ball. That was sort of like the Matt Eberflus special we saw on Sunday, and the Colts just couldn't generate big plays down the field, and it started with not being able to run the ball against that front to take them out of it. I was actually really encouraged by the secondary. That's why I think it this year feels different in fourth quarter defense and red zone defense, because the secondary actually played better than I thought, with guys having, bigger roles in Dallas Flowers and Darrell Baker Jr. The one touchdown in the red zone where Lawrence is just like spinning out of trouble and it's like backyard football and he throws across his body. Like, that's a tip of the cap type of play. But that play really was allowed because the pass rush let down, not because the back end did anything. It's hard to cover elite receivers for 7-8 seconds like they had to on that play. And then the other one, the Zay Jones catch down the right sideline of the end zone, again, tip your cap. Like, that was a hellacious catch by a great player. But I think for the most part, Baker and Flowers, they held up pretty well, and I'm very encouraged by what I saw in their first kind of real test at being the guys on the outside at cornerback, in this defense.
Matt Taylor again, voice of the Colts. You can hear that game, the Colts and Texans, coming up pregame, 10 o'clock in the morning on Sunday right here on The Fan. Then, of course, kickoff at 1 o'clock down in Houston. Matt, appreciate the time. Enjoy Houston and travel safely, all right?
All right. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you next week.
Matt Taylor, the voice of the Colts. Interesting when he was talking about guys on the road, Jimmy, one of the most bizarre and surreal moments of my professional career. I covered the Rams when I was in St. Louis. My first real job in media, or first big job, I guess you'd say, was I was with Fox Sports Midwest in St. Louis, and I covered the Rams when they were the greatest show on turf. And the Rams had a game against the New Orleans Saints that was either Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. And so the Rams reached out to the media that traveled with them because it was really hard to get flights out of New Orleans because it was the holidays. So they said, hey, if you are covering this game, you can travel. We will put you on our flight, let you fly on our flight and travel with the team, stay in the team hotel, and so that you can get home for the holidays, which I was very appreciative of. So I was able to do that. And we stayed so I was staying in the team hotel. I mean, it's not like you're around the team. Like the plane is broken into sections. So we're sitting in the back section. The players are like way up in the front. It's a huge plane. But we get on the buses that go to the team hotel. So I get everything checked in, just like Matt was talking about. And I go down to the lobby. And it was, as a matter of fact, I'm certain, it was Christmas Eve when we got down there. And so, and the game I think was either Christmas morning. Anyway. We were right near the French Quarter, and every restaurant had been rented out for holiday parties, basically. Like, nothing was open. So I go down the lobby, and I'm like, hey, is there somewhere to get something to eat? And they say, well, yeah, actually, like, basically everything's closed. And I said, and they go, but there's a little, like, convenience store 3 blocks away, whatever. I go, okay, I'll go there. Just as I say that, I turn around, and Kurt Warner walks up. And Kurt Warner says to the concierge, hey, is there somewhere around here to get like a candy bar or snacks or something? And they say, yeah, unfortunately, our little thing is closed. There's a convenience store. And I said, well, actually, and I didn't know Kurt Warner well. I mean, but I said, well, there's a convenience store or something down here, and I'm going to go. Do you want me to bring you back like a candy bar? And Kurt Warner goes, you know what? I mean, what else do I have to do? I'll go with you. Like, okay. So we're walking through like off of the French Quarter. We're on this quest to find like a Village Pantry-esque store in New Orleans with the map that the guy had given us. This is pre-cell phone days, whatever. And I'm walking through the French Quarter, and you could see like groups of people that were like going to dinners or whatever that are getting out of their car. And this was literally like 7 months removed from him being the Super Bowl MVP and throwing for the highest yardage total in the Super Bowl history. And like no one realized who it was.
Not a clue.
Not a person said anything to him. It was pretty cool, though. It was pretty fun stuff. All right, road trip fires back up. We're going to go down to Houston. We're going to talk to the voice of the Texans next.
Football.
As I mentioned earlier, the Thursday road trip down to Houston, we had a bit of a snafu. We got down around Evansville and we blew out a tire, but we called AAA. We're back on the road. We're good to go. So as a result of that, we're able to hook up with our next guest down in Texas. Jimmy Cook, let me ask you this question. Do you know what Boston University, Central Michigan, the UMass Minutemen, and the Miami Hurricanes all have in common?
They all were stops along the way for one Marc Vandermeer.
That is correct. His road trip of career has taken him to all those places before now becoming the voice of the Houston Texans and the vice president of broadcasting for the franchise. He joins us now on the hotline. Marc, first off, good to talk to you. How are you?
Great, guys. I'm doing great. Looking forward to this one. This is a nice one between these two with rookie quarterbacks and everything.
That's obviously going to be the storyline, right? So let's begin with this. CJ Stroud. If you are the Indianapolis Colts and you're looking at it and you're assessing film of CJ Stroud, the thing that he does really well at this point in his career and the thing where he is vulnerable would be what two answers?
Well, I think with any rookie quarterback, what you want to do is overwhelm the line of scrimmage, whether it's blitzing or if you can get pressure with four or however you do it. But you want to make sure you get pressure because that's all young quarterbacks. They have difficulty dealing with pressure. But I think with Stroud, what he does, he's a pure passer, guys. He can throw the football. And I've seen him put touch on the ball in some difficult places. The ball placement is very good. So I think they have to be aware of that. And with the Texans, their whole thing is, can you run the football? Because they didn't do it in the opener. And we all thought they would not feast on the Ravens, but at least do a little bit better than they did on the ground. That's the big mystery here. I mean, Stroud put up some reasonable numbers for a rookie debut. You got to be able to run the ball because he's not like Anthony Richardson. He's not going to generate his own ground game. He will run from time to time, but he's not going to do it a ton. So that's my assessment so far.
So that kind of took my second question there, Marc, is does Houston do anything schematically to orchestrate runs for Stroud, or are his legs only used when he's got to obviously escape the pocket?
I would bet that with the bootlegs that you see a lot in this Shanahan, Kubiak kind of system, you're going to get some obvious run options for him. And who knows, maybe as time goes on, they develop some runs for him. But he's not that quarterback. He's a passer, and he's a good one. And so they'd be crazy not to take advantage of all that has to offer. But as you guys know, in this type of offense, you got to at least have the threat of a ground game in order to get the passing game clicking the way they want. Why is Brock Purdy successful? The threat of the run, the bootlegs, the mini boots, all those things they do off the run plays, which look a lot like the pass plays. So until you're able to generate a ground game, or until the opponent is concerned with it at the very least, you're not going to be able to throw it as well as you want.
Voice of the Texans, Marc Vandermeer, our Thursday road trip featured guest here on Query and Company. Marc, for me as a football fan, and I know Texans fans feel the same way, there's been long anticipation for the debut of John Metchie. He has his battle with cancer last year, and he's getting close to a return, then has the hamstring issue and didn't make his debut last week, but the hope is maybe this week, maybe the next couple weeks, he's going to be out there. Where's his timeline right now, and is there a chance that the Colts have to deal with him on Sunday?
Well, he was practicing yesterday. I missed the individual portion today. I was doing an interview, but I would assume he was out there. I hope he was still out there. Look, I want to see it sooner rather than later. Of course, we all want to see it. He's a terrific kid, terrific athlete. I've got a son who's a senior in high school. Automatically, Metchie became his favorite player when he was drafted, got a Metchie jersey. I mean, Metchie's got this sort of contagious, infectious personality, and everybody loves him. Everybody wants to see what he can do out there. Nobody knows how it's going to look. And the coaches, Nick Caseria, DeMeco Ryans, they've all been very careful about how to assess what Metchie is going to be, what he is right now. The party line seems to be he has not played a lot of football lately. It's been a long time. He's been through a lot, which is all true. So I think you've got to give him some time here, be even more patient, as hard as that is in this league and in this world.
Marc, I'm looking at your Twitter avatar. You look like a senior in high school.
Oh, that's very nice of you.
Yeah, that's impressive. You said you had a senior. I'm like, wow, okay, impressive.
That makes me want to move to Indianapolis.
Hey, the Texans and Colts are in, obviously, Marc, similar situations, right? Where anytime that you have a rookie quarterback, you obviously are starting the renovation and the rebuild. They don't like to use the word rebuild, but let's be real here. In terms of the Texans, the strong suit so far for the franchise in terms of the room where they have the most depth is where?
Well, I think that defensively they could be pretty good. You know, right now Petrie is coming off the injury against the Ravens. They're already without Jimmy Ward. Losing those two safeties temporarily is a tough blow for them, but they still have a little bit of depth back there. Eric Murray and MJ Stewart played pretty well for them. Look, I think on that side of the football, when you look at Ward, now we look at an injury here to Ridgeway, so that's too bad. But you look at some of the names they have, some of the veterans they have, and Denzel Perriman among them. Then you look at some of the rookies and or younger players. They've got a lot of talent on that side of the ball. I'm not saying they could be, the Ravens of 2000 or the 85 Bears kind of thing, but they could be pretty good. But we always say this about defense, don't we? Your offense has to fill their side of the ledger. If they fill up their cup with some running game and, hold the ball a little bit, that makes your defense look that much better. You can't go out on the field after have to be able to have some sustained offense in order to make the defense look better.
But, Mark, in addition to that defensively, Will Anderson's a player, isn't he? I mean, this guy, it doesn't even seem like there's been an acclimation period for him. I mean, this guy came out of the womb in the NFL and seems like a heck of a player for the Texans.
It's funny because we've had J.J. Watt here and Mario Williams and Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, these are all highly regarded defensive players, edge guys. And Will Anderson, we didn't know what to expect. And you got to be patient because all three of the other guys I just mentioned, it took them a minute to really get going here. And then they got going. Clowney, not as much of a pass rusher per se as Watt and Mario Williams, who did put up big numbers for a long stretch in this league. But with Will Anderson, in practice, he was destroying people almost automatically. There was one time in camp where they sat him for a day. It was kind of a veteran rest day for a rookie. And then the offense all of a sudden started to look a lot better. And I'm thinking, man, he's been destroying that backfield. So I'm looking forward to seeing him continue to mature, develop, because already he made some plays against Baltimore. And I think when he gets better matchups on opposing O-lines, it's going to look that much better for him.
I don't know how much you've had a chance, Marc Vandermeer, who is the voice of the Texans, joins us here. I don't know how much you've had a chance to really assess and deep dive Indianapolis, but when you talk to the Texans, the coaches there, what do you think the perception outside market is of the Colts, where they are, and what might be intriguing, if anything, about them?
Yeah, it's funny because a year ago, or let's say a little more than a year ago, we were talking about can this team make a deep run in the playoffs, if not get to the Super Bowl with Matt Ryan? And now look at them, right? And look, I know a lot goes into that. We've seen it happen with the Texans. We've seen 2012 going 12-4 and then going 2-14 the next year. These things happen in this league, and it doesn't mean you don't have talent because I think there's plenty of talent on the roster, and we see that talent. But there are some holes on the roster, and that's admitted by you guys and by everybody involved with the Colts, I'm sure. And maybe those things can be taken advantage of by some opponents. I don't know if the Texans are in that position just yet, but I think they match up reasonably well. Even with Ryan opening day last year, they played to the tie. Texans got off to the big lead. Colts tied it up. We all know how it went. And then the final game of the season was just bizarro world. I'll tell you this, guys. The Colts are forever the white whale of the Houston Texans. It's 10-32-1, the all-time series on the Texans side of things. And the fact that they got to double-digit wins for the first time ever in the regular season finale last year, and people complained about it, is just bizarre. It shows you how bizarre this series has been. Like, I am well known in this market for my angst, anxiety, my pain involving the Indianapolis Colts. And I'm just glad that we finally have a coach here who understands that pain because he played against this team. He played against the Horseshoe at the RCA Dome, which I say is the loudest building I've ever heard, and I'll stand on a stack of playbooks and swear that. And he knows how big this series is.
You know, Mark, there are people in Pittsburgh that would tell you that they pumped in artificial noise at the RCA Dome, and that's part of the reason it was so loud. I think it was just because it was small and the noise had nowhere to go.
It was a bandbox. It was like a basketball arena where you played football. And Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis, it always felt like they got a 1-second jump on the snap count. And Manning, the weird thing about that era is, and I'm sure it still happens in Indy, and I've seen it happen, but it's kind of dwindled a little bit, was how well-trained Peyton Manning had that crowd. I mean, it was louder than anything on defense. Then on offense, it was like golf. Quiet,
You're right.
please, right? It was amazing how well-behaved that crowd was and well-trained they were.
Well, Mark, for what it's worth, I mean, around the time that when it was still the Oilers in Houston, but when the Colts first got here, it took a while because the first year they had to do a story on the local news telling people not to do the wave during the offense. like Art Schleicher's out there with Mike Pagel, and they can't, they're trying to get plays run in, and they can't hear anything because the crowd's doing the wave. We were a slow process, Mark, in learning how to handle it, right? It took a while.
Yeah, it's fun. I like going to Indy and seeing the Ring of Honor because – I'm still curious about Jim Harbaugh being on there, but I will say this. Bill Brooks, Boston University alumnus, I am all over that. That's awesome.
Bill Brooks, here's the thing, man. Bill Brooks was, just for the move he had against Denver and a 55-23 win on Monday Night Football on Halloween night, that alone right there puts him in because he was a really good player on really bad teams, and I think they kind of, give him and a good dude, right? He's a good guy. Which is why he's there. Hey, Mark, I'm curious your thought on this before we let you go, and I appreciate the time. The division to me is intriguing because it does appear as though Jacksonville is, on the rise. I think we know that this is the year they probably arrive and take another step. But I'm curious by Tennessee, and I want your thoughts on it because I think you're probably like fans are in Indianapolis of looking at Tennessee and thinking, is Tennessee regressing now, and are they now a year away from having to go where Houston and Indianapolis are, of just completely resetting the deck, or do you think they still have some juice left in it? Where do you see the Titans?
Some people think they've already made that decision, but they're not fully committed to it. With Ryan Tannehill, look, last week was freaky. They did play defense well enough to stay in the game against who knows what the Saints really are, but against that team on the road, we all know it's tough to play in that building, and they hung in there well on the defensive side. But I didn't like what I didn't see out of Henry if I'm a Titans fan, and I'm clearly not. I mean, for me, on the power ranking hate meter in the AFC South, and it's all healthy sports hate, by the way, it's Colts, Titans, Jags. And I don't want to see them successful, but I think with Henry, he still has a lot left, but they need more than that. And I love DeAndre Hopkins for his time here, but, what are they really getting right now with that offensive configuration and the doubts they have at quarterback? You don't draft quarterback that high 2 years in a row if you're fully committed to Ryan Tannehill. We all know that. I think Tannehill still has some game, but does he have enough to help them win? And with everything that went wrong last year with that 7-game losing streak, there they were with the 7th loss. But in that game, they were, if they don't fumble the ball, they might even beat the Jags and still win the division. It's bizarro world in this division. I want one of those years where it's like 2015, 2016, where somebody wins it with 9 victories. I want one of those crazy, wacko AFC South seasons and see if the Texans can get into the mix late.
Mark, I realize that the big event is 1 o'clock, Colts Texans, and that you've had a very busy day today, but I also understand, and I'm sorry it took us this long to reference it, that you have something else big on your plate coming up here in about 15 minutes. If I'm understanding this right, a cook-off between you and the Texans mascot, Toro, which you were defeated last year and are looking for redemption.
I'm a fan of Toro. I like Toro.
Yeah, well, and Toro likes blue. I think they get along. That's a mutual admiration society. But I got to tell you, Toro's going down. I cannot tolerate this from a person without opposable thumbs that they're going to beat me in a cook-off. This is unacceptable, and I want Toro's hide in this one. But you know what? It's a no-win for me. If I win, people hate me because it's Toro. And if I lose, well, I lose. So it's no good either way, but it's fun.
Look, it's a cook-off, right?
Yeah, we're making tacos and some other stuff. I don't know.
You go right across the street
from a team of people.
When you walk out of NRG Stadium, you can either go to the right and go to the Astrodome, or you can go to the left and across the street. There's like the world's largest grocery store called Fiesta, if I'm not mistaken. Go over there, get yourself some good stuff, and beat Toro, right?
Well, this is another grocery store called H-E-B that's sponsoring this, so they would frown on that.
Oh, sorry.
H-E-B is awesome. Texans understand. They get misty-eyed talking about H-E-B. Like when they move out of state, they get emotional about it. It's very cool.
Okay, well, that's cool. So there you go. See, so as long as they're hooking you up, then I have confidence, but I do like Toro. I like any mascot that's in the program. You know what I mean?
You know, it's a good thing I didn't go off on an Astrodome tangent because we would have been here another 10 minutes for sure.
Well, you know, Mark, just so you know, a couple years ago when IndyCar was racing in Houston, I actually found, and this was when it was like still closed and condemned. I know they keep trying to repurpose it, but I found a door ajar and found my way into the Astrodome and walked around and spent like an hour and a half by myself in there, and it was one of the greatest days of my life, just so you know.
And you breathed a lot of asbestos.
I know.
I hope you're okay because
I know.
that does exist there.
There probably is a reason it was condemned, right? I had to actually climb through an air duct to get in there, so that probably was not good either.
There are many and I know the building has so many special memories, but the fact is that the Astros and the Titans left it there, and, you know, they look at the Texans like, what are you going to do with it? Well, wait, we didn't leave this here, you know. They left this here, and it hasn't been used for anything for over 20 years other than the evacuees in Hurricane Katrina, which thank goodness it was there for that in 2005. But really, it's been that long. I mean, it just sits there. It's weird.
Okay, give me the name of the grocery store one more time because I've got to hit it in Houston because now I feel bad.
H-E-B. Don't feel bad. It's okay. It's a Houston sponsor.
H-E-B. All right, there we go. If you're in Houston, you got to stop by H-E-B, and you can actually see all of the groceries that that Toro used for his victory today. But we wish you the best of luck in it. Mark, we'll let you get cooking. I appreciate it.
It's always great to catch up, and I'm looking forward to another chapter in the history of this. I can't call it a true rivalry because the Colts have the major advantage in the series, but it's a series, and it's a really good one filled with drama, so I'm hoping for another big day on Sunday. It's going to be fun.
All right, appreciate it, Mark. Enjoy it on Sunday.
Thanks, boys.
All right, again, Marc Vandermeer, he is the voice of the Houston Texans as part of our Thursday road trip. I still have people that ask me about my day in the Astrodome. I brought back a ton of AstroTurf. I walked out of the stadium. I had to go through the entrance. There was only one way out because I had a bag full of so much AstroTurf that I couldn't go back through the air duct that I had to climb to get into the Astrodome. And when I walked out, there was a state trooper in a 10-gallon hat, and he was standing there with his back to the Astrodome, and I came out of the door, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I thought, well, and he said, do you want to explain to me where you're coming from? And I said, the Astrodome. And I was covered in soot and dirt, and I had AstroTurf spitting out of bags. And he said, do you want to explain to me why you were in the Astrodome? And I said, I'm not going to lie to you. Officer, I'm not going to lie to you. I found an open door. I wanted to go in there. I watched Evel Knievel as a kid. I watched the Bad News Bears. I watched Earl Campbell. It's a special place in part of my childhood, even though I'm not from here. And I just wanted to see it because the building means that much to me and my upbringing. And he looked right at me and said, man, that's pretty awesome. Take it easy. And I walked away.
Have you or someone you loved received gifts from the Astrodome from Jake Cleary?
I still have some turf at home. I'm not going to lie to you. My entire kitchen, for that matter.